And basically what Don points out is, well, the idea is that at one point you're in total darkness. You don't have any idea what's going on. And then you kind of move down the line and, wow, things get a little bit brighter. And I'm starting to see more things than I saw before. And I move further down the line and now I'm in total light. I see everything. But the reality is the Watchtower has never done that. Because what we might expect, and now you can't see it, because that covers it up. Okay. What you would expect is maybe on this side, in the return of Jesus, for instance, in darkness, you might say, like, it might be Charles Russell. What you would have is Charles Russell saying, you know, folks, I really don't know, because, you know, the way truth is established is this dimmer switch thing, and we really don't have any idea right now when Jesus is going to return, but we know it's sometime in the future. Okay, and then maybe you move to maybe the Rutherford era, and he says, you know, truth is getting brighter and brighter. And what we think is Jesus is maybe going to return in the next 200 years. And then you move to, it was Nathan Knorr after that, right? Where were we at? I just lost it. Okay. And then he says, I'm in complete light, and Jesus is going to return in 1972. That's what you would expect if that's how truth was truly revealed by God. But that's not what you see in a Watchtower, because the reality is that Russell claimed to be in complete light, right? And in fact, he was looking backwards. He wasn't even looking forwards. So he couldn't be mistaken. He was looking backward in time. He says, I'm in complete light. Jesus returned in 1874. Rutherford said, I'm in complete light. Jesus returned in 1874. Anybody that would say Jesus would return in 1914 would be considered by these two to be in complete darkness. So that's how it is. It's never a dimmer switch. It's a light switch. One day it's true, next day the light's off, and it's not. Or vice versa. I mean, this works the other way too, right? Today they would say these two are in complete darkness. But these people never claim to be in complete darkness. So it doesn't, and you can go from case to case, issue to issue. It's never gradual. They always claim to be in complete light. So it doesn't actually follow the pattern. It's also self-defeating, logically speaking. How do we know that this whole dimmer switch thing, how do we know that's not in complete darkness? Maybe 20 years from now they're going to say, yeah, Proverbs 4:18 doesn't refer to that. We were in darkness back then. You see, the problem is they're just never admitting that they're in any darkness at all. I mean, that's the problem. So when you don't know you're in darkness, when you truly are in darkness, you can never possibly know that you're out of it. I mean, that's just how things are. That's just reality. And that's the problem with this. And again, it becomes self-defeating. Other problems with 4:18, there we go. It violates their own declarations. Watchtower, February 1881, a new view of truth can never contradict the former truth. New light never extinguishes older light, but adds to it. Frankly, they said, no, it doesn't work that way. They've said it in the past. It doesn't work that way. Now they say, yeah, it works that way. Who are we to believe? Click. If I just say click, will it click? There we go. So they had a problem. The dimmer switch doesn't quite hold it, does it? Doesn't quite work. So they needed something else. And they came up with this idea of tacking. However, this is December 1st, 1981, Watchtower. However, it may have seemed to some as though that path has not always gone straight forward. At times, explanations given by Jehovah's organization have shown adjustments, seemingly, to previous points of view. But this has not actually been the case. So you can believe them or your lying eyes. This might be compared to what is known in navigational circles as tacking. By maneuvering the sails, the sailors can cause a ship to go from right to left, back and forth, but all the time making progress towards their destination in spite of the contrary winds. They actually show tacking on the page. The page isn't up here. I've actually tacked when I was 10 years old, and that's basically what it is. I was at church camp, and I had to get from one side of the lake to the other, a little sunfish, and the wind was blowing against me. So basically, you go to the side, and you let the wind kind of catch your sail and give you momentum, and then you turn the sail parallel to the wind, and you turn the boat parallel to the wind. You take the momentum, and you kind of go forward, and you kind of just keep going back and forth. Sounds nice. Sounds like that kind of makes sense, right? Well, not entirely, no. I think. All right, here we go. Come on. All right. Problem number one, the analogy. Why is truth like tacking? Read the entire article in that 1981 issue. There's no other explanation other than we say it is.
But why is it analogous to tacking? I've never seen anything that says finding truth is analogous to tacking. It is because you say it is. That's it. That's all you have. Well, to you and me, that doesn't hold true to anything, right? We always have to see it. But to a Jehovah's Witness, they have their justification. So that actually, okay, yeah, I can hang on to that. That's fine. Secondly, it's self-defeating. How do we know the idea of tacking isn't just a tack to the right or to the left? How do we know tomorrow that they're not going to turn around and say, yeah, you don't find truth by tacking? Because they never know when they're tacking, right? They never say, oh, right now we're laying something out, but we don't know if this is right or wrong. We don't know whether or not you should have a blood transfusion. We're just tacking. They never say that. They're always definitive, right? So how do we know the idea of tacking itself isn't going to be changed tomorrow? So they never know. Third, who is steering the ship anyway? I thought we had this line of communication from Jehovah God to Jesus to the governing body down to the congregation. Why does God have to hone in on the truth? Why does God have to kind of get there? Why can't God just give us the truth? Lastly, well, not lastly, in this case, it's not historical. February 1881. If we were following a man, undoubtedly it would be different with us. Undoubtedly, one human idea would contradict another, and that which was light 1 or 2 or 6 years ago would be regarded as darkness now. But with God, remember God's leading this, steering this ship, there is no variableness, neither shadow of turning. Couldn't have said it better myself. And so it is with truth. Any knowledge or light coming from God must be like its author. All the way to 1976. It's a serious matter to represent God and Christ in one way. This is them chastising another religious group for making changes in their doctrine. It's a serious matter to represent God and Christ in one way, and then find that our understanding of the major teachings and fundamental doctrines of the Scriptures was in error. And then after that, to go back to the very doctrines that, by years of study, we had thoroughly determined to be in error. Christians cannot be vacillating, wishy-washy about such fundamental teachings. What confidence can one put in the sincerity or judgment of such persons? Amen. Absolutely true. And it applies to the Watchtower. The fact of the matter is, it's not biblical either. Because the Bible uses language that the Watchtower uses in this tacking analogy to describe people that are spiritually lost. Ephesians 4:14, then we will no longer be infants, tossed back and forth by the waves, and blown here and there by every wind of teaching, and by the cunning and craftiness of men and their deceitful scheming. It's almost like God knew they were coming, isn't it? James 1:6, but when he asks, he must believe and not doubt, because he who doubts is like a wave of the sea, blown and tossed by the wind. I am constantly amazed as I investigate the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society and investigate Mormonism. What we do in the book is kind of put the cases against each out there, and then kind of go through the Bible and say, gee, this matches up with this, this, and this, and so on and so forth. I am constantly amazed how smart God is. How smart he is to know this was coming and to prepare us, to speak directly to their defenses effectively, is what he's done. The latest defense, this has come into our ministry in the last probably year and a half, 2 years, pretty heavily. And it's very simply, the errors are too old to be relevant. After all, hasn't the Christian church made errors in the past? We can't be held accountable for errors we made 100 years ago. All right, well, thank you. There's several problems. Number one, it's not analogous. It's a false analogy. Christian church, none of the Christian churches that I know claiming to speak directly for God or claiming to be the faithful and discreet slave. And if they are, and they're failing to test for a false prophet, we ought to turn our back on them. It's just that simple. All right? So it's a false analogy. We don't have Christian churches doing that. At least none that I know of. Number two, fallacy of equivocation. 2 wrongs don't make a right. Doesn't matter if there are 100 other Christian churches that have done it. None of that is going to make the Watchtower right. It's just going to make 101 people that have done it wrong. So it's the fallacy of equivocation. And lastly, an argument from age fallacy. 2 plus 2 has equaled 4 for 6,000 years. I'm a young earth creationist, in case you didn't guess. And it will equal 4 6,000 years from now. Whether the Lord returns or not, it's still going to equal 4. Doesn't matter how old it is. Parts of the Bible are 5,000 years old. Does that make them out of date? Does that make them not true, Mr. Jehovah's Witness? So it's the argument from age fallacy.